the fact that like the dumbest shit, like you turn on Fox News, it's like, are millennials ruining donuts? Like,
well, they probably did. What did millennials do to donuts this time?
I don't know. The same thing they did to music, and they won't get off their goddamn phones.
Fuck! I just picked up my phone right when you said that. Like you can't even see me on screen, right? But I in all fairness, I was picking up my phone to open OneNote so I could pull up the notes for today's episode.
Wait, are we streaming right now?
Yeah, we're live. I'm sorry. Yeah, we did our first cold open, or I think is that called a cold open, where we're just like we're just talking. Is that a cold open? Is that what we did?
I think stupid.
No. You said the N-word like 5 times, like with a hard R. You were going
with an M, millennial.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
They can't keep us down.
But I failed to tell you that we were gonna do an open like that. I just know I looked over at the clock and it was like we were already at 7:30. I figured like I need to just like go live. I mean, we can of course like cut this out for the recorded part. We can go back. Like,
okay. I mean, you shouldn't be afraid of failure.
Dude, I'm terrified of it.
I'm trying to get the angle just right for the camera here. We got it. Okay, cool.
So what is it? This is episode 22. Okay. I'm like creating the notes right now because so we had a completely different episode planned. We were gonna do Comfort Zone, which is a lesser known Kenny Loggins song.
Is there really a Kenny Loggins song called Comfort Zone?
No, they would Highway to the Danger Zone. I don't know. That joke probably landed with someone. There's someone out there that got a good chuckle snort out of that. But no, so we did have a different topic planned, which I mean, kind of ties together a little bit. There's a few episodes we have that all kind of intertwine, I would say. But because of some I guess like just scheduling conflicts in general, we switched the topic literally last minute, like last what is this? Last 5 minutes, last 10 minutes, maybe
like 10, last 10 minutes.
Okay, so we're gonna try to do this completely off the cuff. Let's open the correct way.
Okay. Oh yeah, hit that blue res.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. It's the podcast that improves itself, improves ourselves, and improves the self in general. My name is Ty. I'm going to be your host, and I am back with my belligerent co-host and distant. That was the first adjective that came to my head. Sorry, you're not belligerent today at all. I don't know why I went with that, but I've seen you belligerent, so it does work.
Yeah, you've seen me that way for sure. Not proud of it, but sometimes I can be belligerent.
So if this is not your first time watching us, you can probably tell that Distance is not at his normal location. Still traveling. You're still out in the world.
Yeah, sometimes I go places.
But you kind of took like a two-purpose trip, right? Didn't start out as like a work trip that now you're on the Thanksgiving holiday, right?
Yes, cool. A little bit of both.
Good. Okay. All right. So how are things with the family? How's that going?
Good. It's great. It's great.
I am I'm trying as hard as I can to avoid getting into the subject. I'm trying to make small talk. Tell me about the window fixture behind you. I really like that.
Those are the blinds that came with the house.
Really? Those are stock? Those look aftermarket. It looks like it would be.
I mean, those are what they built. So you don't have to buy them. They're like wood. Straight up wood, and there's like some metal pieces where you pull the whole little rod in the middle, and it kind of But I mean, I'm afraid to use them because I think I might fail.
Well, I would argue you don't need to be afraid of failure. I think,
I don't really want to get into the subject of the podcast because I'm afraid that I might fail.
I know I'm going to. Dude,
But we
you
probably
know
will.
me. Like, I need to be over prepared for everything. So I was all good and cozy with the subject. I had my little notes. I had watched, a few YouTube videos. I had watched some TED Talks. Um, I failed to prepare for this subject at all. So we are going to
We'll do it live.
to actually do it live. Dude, I'm kind of nervous about this, man. I don't know why. My palms are sweaty. I've got spaghetti.
You know what? I was gonna make the spaghetti reference, dude. You were worried about us sounding dated, and that reference right there is just.
Yeah. God, how old is that movie now? Jesus. Good point.
It came out in like 2003, I think, maybe before that. I don't know. It was a while ago. And if you don't know what we're talking about, don't worry about it.
If she doesn't know what we're talking about, she's too young for you.
It's true. If that was a recent reference, I don't get it because I'm dated.
No, it's just a thing. Like, yeah. If you were to be dating a woman, and I found out that she did not know what that movie was, isn't there a good chance she's too young for you?
Probably, yeah.
It's just
yeah. It makes sense, yeah.
So, oh man, the only reason that what was his name? Rabbit, right? The rapper in that movie, Eminem's character, wasn't it Rabbit?
I think that's the name of the character. Yes.
Yeah, so the only reason he succeeded in that movie is because he wasn't afraid to fail, right? He made an idiot out of himself. He completely choked
to some degree.
Yeah.
So that's true. Because he would. This is a weird way that we started, but yeah, he does a bunch of rap battles at the beginning of the film that are just epic fucking failures.
Mm-hmm. Epic fail.
I hope epic fail is not a dated term. We decided not to name this episode that because we thought it might be dated, and I just said it. Okay. Yes, they are bad failures. Like he doesn't actually do well in any of them, but I mean, I don't know that I would actually be particularly comfortable with doing something like that. Which that's funny because we'll probably talk about comfort level a lot in this one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, are you familiar with the saying, if you wish to be a master, you must first be willing to be a fool?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before.
So it's like, I don't think you can really, you're going to look stupid to begin with in everything you do. I mean, there's no way to avoid that.
Pretty much. I mean, there are some people that have just like a natural inclination to some things. And you know what I mean? Like I've seen people do something for the first time where they actually don't look like an idiot. And you're like, but those are so rare and you're blown away by that. And you're like, whoa, this person's, you're a natural at that. Like that should not be the norm and that should not be expected.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, and not to be like unpleasant about it, but I don't have a lot of, I have some admiration for people that have talent, but I don't like really revere them or like necessarily respect them a lot. Not to say that I disrespect them, but I don't hold people like that in very high esteem, because if you're particularly talented at something, then you don't have to work terribly hard to be good at it.
Be good.
A lot of the time, people that are naturally talented, they'll end up earning the disdain of people around them just because of that. And it's out of that's mostly out of jealousy and probably even insecurity to some degree. But I guess I'm sitting here thinking, like, because I was talking to my nephew on this trip, and what were we talking about? I don't remember what we were talking about in particular, but something that I think is valuable in the subject of failure is that when you look at something that you are good at now, and you realistically and honestly look at how you were at that before, you will realize very quickly that you were pretty awful at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that you are actually quite good now. Like, for instance, me, So family trip, like I said, my dad doesn't live too far from here,
Mm-hmm.
and he and I actually went to the gun range, and I shot his handgun there. And the last time we shot was 4 years ago,
Okay.
and I was like all over the place. Like I don't know how much you know about shooting, but every now and then, like if you have a round that just lands in some crazy spot, they call it a flyer.
Okay. I've never heard that
And
term, but okay, that makes sense.
so basically, the last time we shot, every round I fired was a flyer. Like all of them were like, "Were you aiming at anything?" So my dad actually told me that he was actually pretty impressed that I had gotten so much better because he as cheesy as it is, he was like, "You've officially gone from being a boy to a man." And I was like, "Okay."
Because you can
All
shoot
I
a
had to
gun
do
now. Hell yeah.
was shoot a small enough group on a target.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think about the stuff that I did, and the things I worked on, and the things that I learned to get better at it. There's all kinds of things that shooting is not as easy as people think it is.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to
And
it. Yeah.
being good at it requires a lot of effort and a lot of technique and understanding. So it was kind of exciting to like do that. But the first time I went to the range with my dad, I knew I wasn't good at it. I knew I wasn't. I didn't have very much experience at all. I'd only really shot with a few other people a few other times. And I mean, it's just like I did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird because I think that I don't get anxious about stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was exactly what I wanted to bring up, though, is with different activities come different levels of like risk or exposure. And with like going shooting at a range, that's pretty low risk, right? Like, I mean, I guess like, it is a like dangerous activity as far as like because you are using a tool that can be deadly. But I mean, as far as like you're not doing something that is competitive or like putting really much at stake. It's more like just a cooperative like fun activity. But
yeah, like if I do badly, it's like, oh well, damn, I did badly.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I guess like your dad said, maybe it means more to him if you do poorly. I guess there is something at stake there, right?
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people I think are particularly there's a particular weight involved in like your parents' opinions, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like, and he wasn't like a jerk about it when I wasn't very good the first time.
Yeah.
But he was like very like happy that I'd done such a good job the second one. So I think. Well, hey, we just got a new place we can go with this now.
How did that make you feel though? Did it make you feel proud, or not proud?
Yeah,
did it make you feel good that he was proud, or did it make you? Yeah, how did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, like I got a certain degree of satisfaction from it because I don't know about other people, but I will always want the love of both of my parents, but the respect from my dad is a little more valuable to me. I want my mom to respect me, but there's something unique about my relationship with my father where I want him to respect me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do something that seems to earn that from him, then it is very like satisfying. It's really nice for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it was cool to hear him say that. But I think that one thing that might contribute to people's fear of failure is having like excessively critical parents.
Ooh, yeah. I could see
not
that.
everyone that has a problem with failure necessarily has excessively critical parents, but when you got parents or even like older relatives that are jumping over you for like everything,
Mm-hmm.
Depending upon how they express that, it might actually end up causing a bit of a difficulty with doing anything because you might do it badly.
Yeah. The opposite is true too, though. Have you ever heard of like it's an idea of like almost a depression or an anxiety that's caused by a level of narcissism that's found very often in like kids that maybe were like genius children or like like academically gifted, where they were at such a young age told so often that or supported so much that they were expected to be so great that they're terrified to like try to do many things because they're afraid of failure and afraid of like realizing that that's not the reality that they've been living for so long.
Yeah. A similar idea. There's like in restaurants, like when a restaurant wins like 3 Michelin stars,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a big deal, the executive chefs and the owners will actually get really crazy about keeping it,
Yeah.
because like if you lose it, you're like screwed.
Yeah. That's
Like
your
no
whole
one will come
reputation.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Yeah, because it's like you don't want to, or perhaps maybe because then they won't take the like risks. Maybe in the restaurant kind of context, maybe
Mm-hmm.
they won't do any like sort of avant-garde or unorthodox dishes, and they'll keep playing it safe and doing what they've been doing to keep that. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, dude, that sucks. Like that is a shitty feeling. It's like being trapped by your own talent and abilities.
Exactly. Yeah. You're being trapped by your potential, basically. Because there's this like very big chance that if you tried to live up to that potential, you could fail and let everyone else down. And instead you've got to
Yeah.
like keep up this image of like, it's like if you never try, you never fail. And that way you could have always succeeded, right? Does that make sense? Like you're kind of keeping up an image of like of the possibility that yeah, like if I would have just tried it, things would have been all right.
Yeah. Um,
Ooh, that's true
man.
too. What Monozaki just said in chat. Kids grow up sometimes being told they're special, smart, amazing, and instead of actually learning to work for what you want, they think they deserve it just for existing, become entitled. Yeah, basically, because they've been
Yeah.
ingrained with that in their brain since birth. Yeah, that definitely happens as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that somehow just succeed at everything that they do,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be yeah. I feel like I've talked about this with a person, maybe not on the podcast though. Are you familiar with the show Penny Dreadful?
We spoke about it recently. Yes.
Were we talking on the podcast?
I don't think so. Man,
Okay,
it's hard for
well,
me to keep it straight now. No, I think that was a phone conversation.
okay, so I'll just mention it here then.
Mm-hmm.
So in Penny Dreadful, there's a Dorian Gray character, and anyone that's not familiar with that, Dorian Gray is this forever youthful man that like just is, he's beautiful all the time, and there's actually a painting of what he actually looks like. The painting will change over time, so he's like hundreds of years old. And in Penny Dreadful, the series, he can look at the painting whenever he wants to. But I think in the original like literary legend, if he looks at the painting, he'll become like essentially a corpse,
Mm-hmm.
because in reality he's more or less dead. But there's an episode where he's talking to Miss Ives, who's one of the main characters in there, and Miss Ives pretty much tells him, "I can't see you anymore," and he begins to sort of feel bad. And he's like, I've never felt this feeling before. And I think a tear goes down his face, and he's like, I don't understand this. And so she says to him, Dorian, this feeling is called rejection. And he's like he doesn't understand how to handle it because he's
Mm-hmm.
never done it before.
Yeah.
Because he's a well-read, interesting, very attractive man, and he has absolutely no difficulties with men or women that he's interested in. So I think that sometimes when you're used to everything being so great and never having to work for anything, that once you do fail at something, it can be devastating. Or
Mm-hmm.
I guess more to his point in the chat, that you almost feel like that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Like, don't you know who I am?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, this can't happen to me. I'm good at everything.
I hate that sentence. Don't you know who I am? Is like one of the most annoying questions on the face of the earth.
Yet usually my answer to that is no. Nobody knows who you are.
But what if you do? What if you do know? Are you gonna lie to them? You'd be like, yeah,
I
I
mean,
do.
if I actually did, I mean, I would just tell them in reality who they were, and it's probably not as special as they think they are.
Okay, so like you're at Starbucks. You're waiting to get your what do you drink from Starbucks? What's you would get like a just like a black coffee.
Oh no, black coffee at Starbucks is disgusting. Their coffee, I mean, that coffee's made to have stuff put in it, so I mean, this is completely irrelevant, but I would order a white chocolate, a triple white chocolate mocha with 2 pumps and no whip.
Okay, so you're in line at Starbucks. You're standing. You're waiting for your triple white chocolate mocha with 2 pumps, no whip. And this guy comes in and just pushes past you and gets in the line right in front of you. And you're like, dude, you cut in front of me. And he turns around and he says, hey, buddy, don't you know who I am? And it's fucking Tom Cruise. You do know who he is. You're not going to pretend like he doesn't. Everybody there knows that you know who he is. You can't pretend like you don't know who he is. What would you tell him? You're like, hey, I'm just trying to get my triple white chocolate mocha with 2 pumps and no whip. Why you got to be like this, bro?
Dude, it's almost like you work at Starbucks. You're just like rattling that off. Like you got it in your head. Impressive, sir. I would actually be like, yes, you are Tom Cruise, but that does not mean that you can jump in front of line and push people around and be an asshole.
All right,
also, Tropic Thunder was brilliant. That's what I would say. Tom who?
Dude, that's actually a really good backhanded compliment because that movie is now like 11 or 12 years old. So if you point to the last good thing he did as being over a decade ago, that's kind of like
that is true. It's like a slight at the same time.
Yeah, I like that.
I think I would be upset if I actually knew, but I think that somehow don't you know who I am? That phrase like implies that because you are whoever you happen to be, that you are entitled to whatever thing you're invoking that phrase for.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there are like a few times where it could work. You know, it's like if you're the director of a movie, you go to sit in a chair that's labeled director, and someone's like, "Hey, sir, you can't sit there." You're like, "Hey, don't you know who I am?" Like that works.
Yeah, it's like
that's actually me. Yeah, but
I mean that makes sense. That's a place where it's like okay.
But yeah, no, you're completely right. And I think that's why it bothers me so much. Is normally it is just 100% entitlement, and that is like the most annoying thing to me. I mean, I'm sure that like I'm sure I'm a huge hypocrite. I'm sure we're all guilty of it, but entitlement is like just such a bothersome thing to me.
Yeah, I mean it's a quality that upsets me probably more than anything else. I mean, among the things that suck, entitlement actually upsets me more. Entitlement and pretentiousness are bad things. But I guess that because I guess so far we've talked about things that might contribute to someone having a fear of failure. But I guess if we want to be the most helpful, I mean, anyone that's actually listening that has a problem with fear of failure, that was just so gross. I just scratched my bottom eyelid on camera and I forgot that I was on camera. Gross. Sorry. And if you're listening to this somewhere else, congratulations. You see me just scratch my eyelid all gross like on camera. I'll do it again.
I liked that one. That was it's like impossible to rub your eye like that without your mouth being open.
But you know what? Wait, hold on.
I mean, you can do it if you force it, but like, yeah, I'm surprised you're able to do that. It didn't feel natural, right?
I feel sick.
Yeah, exactly. It's not right.
But I mean, I guess the encouragement here is that what we're looking to do, I think, is that we want people to not be afraid. So it's like, perhaps we should touch on the subject of when you fail, how do you handle it?
Well, the interesting thing is, like, we were just talking about with failure, the best antidote to the fear of failure is just experience with failure, right? Because you 9 times out of 10, actually probably more than that, right? 99 times out of 100, there are little to no consequences. Whatever you have dreamt up that you're afraid of is way worse than whatever is going to actually happen if you fail at said activity.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're correct. I think that most of the time, whatever crazy fantasy it is that we dream up, that like, you know, I start a coffee shop and I get some investors and I completely screwed up and I'm completely ruined. I'll never be able to do anything else ever again. My family won't talk to me anymore. My dog will hate me. I'll be broke for the rest of my life. Whatever little reputation I have ruined, and the world will be engulfed by a fireball.
Don't forget the plague of locusts.
Yeah, plague of locusts, because the sun's going to explode strictly because I failed. But obviously, I'm being hyperbolic here on purpose. But yeah, I mean, you're right, man. I think that maybe it's what's the worst that can happen, and that's kind of a Stoic thing, really. Like if you look at Seneca wrote, or what's the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen, and when you really think about it, it's usually not that bad.
Or if it is that bad, you realize how many twists and turns you had to take to get there to the worst situation that it's so unlikely. You realize how unlikely that actually is, true. Right? Like, so yeah, either way, like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I mean, the absolute worst thing that can happen really in most cases is a fantasy scenario. I mean, in the unlikely event that occurs, like in the airplanes, in the unlikely event of a crash, because they want to make sure that this won't happen most likely, but just in case, that at least you're mentally prepared for that. I mean, honestly, like anytime I think to myself, okay, if something bad happens, if the plane crashes, if you survive, you have 30 seconds to get out. When you stand up, you walk this way and you feel this many seats, and that's the exit. And when you get to the exit row, where inevitably the person that agreed that they'd be fine doesn't open the door because they're terrified, then you read the instructions, you rip the fucking door off, and you get as many people out of the plane as you can before getting yourself off within 30 seconds, because most likely the plane's going to be engulfed in a fireball very quickly. If you don't, like, I know that that's most likely not going to occur, but I'm ready for it in case it does.
Yeah. The really interesting thing about that type of failure is, like, it is the complete opposite. Just like you were talking about, like in the unlikely event, like the type of failure we're talking about is incredibly likely. Like I think the benefit to come from this would be to learn to expect failure. And you're going to fail many times before you succeed in most endeavors. And if you are deterred by failure, like one of the first few times, you're never going to find success, because it normally, like, failure is going to happen multiple times before you find success.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, we even have I think we even have recorded on the podcast. We got at least 3 or 4 times where we really fucked up the intro.
Yeah, a couple. Yeah.
But the other thing is that, I mean, in some way, like, I think that when we screw up, it's kind of makes it more fun.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
I think that it's almost like when you fail with other people, it's kind of a bonding experience too.
I can see that. Yeah.
So it's like, I think in some cases, like what we were talking about earlier with the people that are are told that they're like special, smart geniuses and awesome their entire. I completely just lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Fuck. Okay. On the subject of failure,
you did that on purpose.
No, I'm not kidding.
You're pretending. Don't.
No, dude. We'll come back to that one in a minute. Jesus, where was I going with that?
It was with the special little kids that were told they're gonna be something big one day.
Dude, I honest to God have no idea. Okay, we'll get back to that. This is oh God, I wish I was seriously just okay, whatever. This is so sad. But it's like, even when we started this, like, we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
I would argue we still don't, but we're learning, right?
But I mean, I think as time goes on, I think we're way better. I mean, we've had to Ty, are you changing the layout of the video right now?
I'm trying to fix you. Yeah. There we go. I'm sorry. The new room you were in, like, it was just like your face, and I didn't think it looked good. I'm sorry. There we go.
You just did a podcast on perfection.
We'll do it live.
Perfectionism by
And this one's about failure. I'm failing, all right? I'm doing it.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like because we had our guest canceled, we could have just canceled the podcast today. But instead, we actually risked getting on here and screwing something up. Which, I mean, I've already lost my train of thought and completely forgotten the point that I was trying to make.
That happens, man. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is hilarious. But it's like I'm trying to think of like, because I've tried a lot of things, and I think that I've failed at a lot more things than I have actually succeeded at, and I think that that's really just life.
Well, yeah, that's the only way you're going to find what you're good at, unless of course, like we talked about earlier, there are those people that try something when they're young, realize they have like some sort of natural talent for something, and then those are the kids that you knew in elementary school that knew what they were going to be when they grew up. There's always like that one kid. He's an outlier. Him aside, everyone else, the 99.9% of the rest of us, are going to have to try to do multiple different things before we find that we're good at something, and we're going to fail at all of those first things until we find the thing that we start to either realize we like a lot enough to, fail enough to make us succeed, or realize that like, oh, hey, hold on, I'm starting to get good at this.
Right. And if you're not willing to tolerate failure, then you will never find that thing.
Exactly.
You'll never try enough things to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that happens to a lot of people, right? Like, as we're talking about in the actual scheme of life, I guess, I mean, in the big picture, what we're talking about is basically like finding a career, right? Like, you're going to try different things, different aptitudes, like, and then eventually you'll find something that you can do for a living. You're going to fail at it at first, but I guess, like, I mean, that is one thing. It's going to be, even the thing you're good at, you're still going to fail at the first time, most likely. How do you differentiate that failure from, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a failure that you want to try to repeat to get better at, and there's going to be another type of failure that means, okay, maybe this isn't for me, let's move on to something else. How do you differentiate between those two types of failure?
I mean, maybe this is weird, and I hope it's a relatable statement, and I don't know if you feel the same or not, but going back to the whole like thing with because I talked about going to the range with my dad, like with firearms, like I remember, because obviously it's not my career. You can also have like hobbies that you may or may not be good at, and determine if this is something that you want to like spend any time on. So the first time, like I was Mr. Stereotypical martial artist that hated guns guy.
Okay. And
I was like, I don't understand guns, like blah 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 blah, fill in the blank, whatever nasty stuff you want to say. And then a couple guys that I knew, it was actually a friend of, my girlfriend at the time's roommate. Her boyfriend invited me to go to the gun range with him.
Okay.
And I'd never shot a gun ever. And it was a Ruger LC9, I think is the name of the gun. I still remember that. And it's like a newbie thing that people do, like where I got the target that was like the guy with the hostage.
Is that not the cool target to get? What are you supposed to get?
No, it's like, that's like a newbie.
Oh shit.
Like I mean, people get it, but it's like, it's just sort of lame. Like, I don't think that's part of like gun culture, but to me, it's like a lame thing, like for somebody to get that target.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I got that one, and I was like, because like we've all seen movies, and they use like, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen when I squeeze this trigger. I don't know what this is going to feel like, and I go like, I shot the hostage right in the head. Like
that's a good shot, though. Well, where were you aiming?
Right in the center of the forehead.
Where were you aiming?
The hostage taker's head.
Okay. So you had a little bit of like a slice to it, or a hook. So you can.
Yeah.
You can fix that
if we want to use golf terms. But the thing is it was so awesome. Like I was so excited. Like even though, and everyone was making, dude, wow, this is a bad sign. Like you might be really bad at this. And the funny thing is actually I fired a couple more shots that were unbelievably close to the same spot where my first bad one was, which means I somehow had this like unearthly consistency in how bad I was.
Well, there's like two aspects to accuracy, right? Because there's accuracy and there's consistency. Right. So if you're consistently bad in the same way, that's not horrible. That's a good thing.
Yeah, but it's like you can build on that, adjust that positive to include the other thing, which is accuracy. But yeah, I think that the thing that differentiates it is that I didn't care that I screwed up. Like it was so much fun, and I was so excited about it that I just like I want the effort to keep doing it, because there's something very exhilarating about firing a gun. Mm-hmm. And and regardless of any thoughts or political or civil sort of leanings you have, there is something exhilarating about doing it. And I didn't realize that until I did it. I was like, oh, that was amazing. Mm-hmm. So I think that people will have sort of and the thing is I can't be logical. There's a sort of like metaphysical kind of sense that you have about something that you enjoy that much, that it may be that there's some things that you don't mind failing at, but you won't know until you actually do it.
Okay.
Do you have any similar experience, or do I just crazy person? But if I sound crazy, that's fine. Just let me know.
No. Well, okay, yeah. No. Whenever you talk about how much you love shooting guns, no, you don't sound crazy at all. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. But no. You don't sound crazy. But no, I do know what you mean though, where you find that thing that you fail at and it still feels good. It's like a lot of experiences. I fail at something and the initial reaction is like, all right, well let's go do something else. Like I'm done with this. Like sometimes I'll have to tell myself like, okay, no, maybe that's not the right reaction. Let's focus on this and see if we can get better. Let's see if we can improve. There are other activities though where I fail and it's like, ooh, that was fun. I want to do that again. Or like, there was some sort of spark that I got from it. It was like, ooh, I immediately want to jump back in. A lot of times it's happened with games. A lot of different games that I'm like, you start playing and you're really bad at it and you fail miserably, but it's like, it just immediately sucks you in.
Yeah. I mean, that brief for weeks, like I was really bad at it and I still had fun, but there was a point that I got to, at least me personally, where I just wasn't having fun anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't worth the effort to be better at it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Perhaps if something's not, and I don't want to use a cliche here, but I'm going to have to. Perhaps if something is not meaningful enough to you, then that's a situation in which you have no tolerance for the failure.
Okay.
Because, I mean, one thing, it's just kind of weird conundrum that I've experienced with like physical fitness, that it seems that people that are in really good shape are people that like working out and like exercise. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate because I have no advice to give somebody that wants to be in shape but hates exercising, because I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that perhaps everybody has that one thing that they enjoy that much that they're going to succeed at just because it's such a fun and enjoyable thing for them.
Well, do you think it's possible to learn to like things? It has to be, right? Like there's got to be things that are acquired tastes that like even in the beginning you can hate it, but through just I mean maybe just repetition eventually you can learn to
I agree with you. I think to some degree because it's like I don't know. Oh God, I'm using so many cliches. When you get over the hump, I think there's a point where when you maybe even if you don't love something the first time, even if you screw up at it, you should give it a proper chance to be certain that it's something that you really dislike and you don't want to put the effort into. But I think that also when you try something new and you end up being terrible at it, and you don't much enjoy it, and you spend some time to see if you enjoy it and if you can get better to the point where it is enjoyable, that if you get there and you're like, this is not my thing, you have just failed.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. Maybe it's not something that is really, God, another cliche. Fuck. Maybe it's not something that's meant for you. I feel filthy.
Are you saying that it's not me, it's them?
Yeah, we've been broken up with before. Yeah, it's not you. It's not you. It's the activity.
Cool. Cool.
Good, but it's also good. Like I think the challenge is like, where do you draw the line between like being truly honest with the fact that this is not your kind of activity, this is not meant for you, so to speak, this is not the right thing for you, and just accepting, like there has to be a line between how do we assess, is this something that I truly will never be good at, or that I truly don't like, versus rationalizing giving up on something.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, I would argue most things, as long as you have the physical ability to start it, most people have the ability to get good at it, right? It's just effort. The question is, do you have the drive to want to get good at it? Is it going to be worth it to you in the long run? I don't know. That's tough, because there's a lot of things you can do that, especially like we were just talking about, like in the scheme of life, there's a lot of career paths you can take that maybe you don't really enjoy. I mean, like everyone says, like you find a job doing something you like and you'll never work a day in your life. Or isn't the statement something, or the saying something like that?
Yeah, they say love. They say a job you love.
Okay, I found a job you love. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's how that.
But
cliche or platitude or whatever goes.
How many people actually end up with a career like that? It's got to be rare, right? Like most people are just doing something to get by, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the reality of vocations is that there's a lot of jobs that in Western society, there's a lot of jobs that no one is going to love.
Yeah,
but they need to get completed because of the way that we've structured industry and products for consumerism. But there's some stuff that you just have to accept the fact that everything what I'm trying to say is like, not every vocation. That's what I'm trying. So I guess the way that I think about it, and sorry, trying to get my thoughts in order here.
No worries.
We do it live.
Exactly. Yeah. I kind of want to take a turn here because I'm sorry, your mic cut out. You want to take a turn here, and then I didn't hear the rest of that.
Wait, did it really? Oh, yes. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I want to take a turn here because I thought about everything I'm thinking of earlier. And I think that I would like to touch on the subject of how social networking sort of applies to this.
Okay.
Like how much does, I think we talked about it before, that you even talked about on the perfectionism podcast, where you see all these people, and not even just social media, just media in general. You see all these people doing all these things, and you never really realize how much they had to do, how much work they had to put in to get there.
Yeah.
I think that maybe there's some delusion that people have that they perceive the difficulties that they're experiencing as a failure, when in reality they've only been exposed to the successful part of it. So they have a sort of distortion about what it really takes. Because I think that another thing is we need to be able to determine when we've actually failed.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we may not have actually gotten there yet.
Yeah.
We may not have actually proven that we've screwed up to the point where we just know that we won't be able to do it. We're done. This is a failure.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, that is a really good point that I hadn't even really thought of. When is something just a setback and when is it actual failure? Honestly, I mean, I would argue like it's almost always just a setback, right? Until you're actually like completely bankrupt, it's not a real failure. But I guess you do have to draw the line somewhere and say that, okay, this failed.
Yeah.
Well, how do you isolate that then?
I don't know. that's why I asked the question. Like, I've got no clue. I mean, I think, well, if we, then maybe there never really is a true failure. Maybe it's just giving up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's like you failed this time, but that doesn't mean you failed every time. There's only a few situations in which something's a complete failure, like climbing Everest and dying of hypothermia.
Yeah.
That's a failure because you can't do anything else after that. Failing a military mission with dire consequences. If you don't do this, that someone gets hurt severely or several people die. Well, that's clearly defined. You failed that specific mission and there's no going back.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe sometimes when we think we failed, we're just accepting. We're saying, okay, well, that's not going to work. I'm done.
I think almost every time. I think that's what it is. I mean, it's so life's like a poker game, right? Everything you're trying to do is another hand that's dealt. Maybe you lost that hand. That was a little failure, but all it is just a tiny little setback, right? Like you're the one that actually chooses when you're going to like pick up your cards and go play at another table. That's like actually walking away. That's the real failure. You just chose the point where it's a choice, basically, is what I'm trying to say. You chose the point where you wanted to walk away and designate that as a failure rather than a setback, because it could have been a setback. You could have just continued. I would think that applies to almost everything. Anything that I can think of in my past when I thought that I like failed at something, quote unquote, I could have kept doing it. It was just it got to a point where I decided that it was like, okay, I'm not good at this, or I'm not willing to put in the time or effort to be good at this, and I'm going to change and do something else.
Yeah, that's true. So failure is in fact an isolated happening. And in that particular situation, the failure is isolated to that moment and that time with that experience with that specific task. And then if you try the same task again with an adjustment, that you might actually, we'll call it fail again, but that you may actually come a little bit closer to succeeding that time.
Exactly.
And oh my God, you know what? Hold on. I will be right back.
Sure. No problem.
I don't mean to like screw things up here.
No, you're good, dude. No worries, though.
Just give me like a minute.
You're good.
Talk about something interesting.
Oh God. But yeah, so oh God, he closed his camera too. Shit. Well, I want to go to this scene for a second. Jeez. It is loud there. I don't know what exactly is going on, dude. What if we just started hearing like yelling, like screams for help? Help me! Yeah. Oh God, that would be horrible. Okay. But no. So all right. So that was an attempt at a joke, which was a massive failure. But as we're talking about, I think that the choice is up to you when something is an actual failure. I don't think there's very many situations where you have failed to a degree that you can no longer continue. I think it's going to be very common that you fail, you quote unquote fail at something by oh my god, what is going on there? You quote unquote fail at something by reaching a setback that you then decide it's not worth continuing. Oh, I think you might be back. Yes,
okay,
he is.
sorry about that, man.
Hey, no worries, dude.
Cool. Okay, so shit. All right, I had a eureka moment.
Okay, I want to hear it.
So, all right, people fail, and that's realistic. That's normal. That's truthful.
Yeah.
But to perceive yourself as a failure is a delusion. It's a distortion.
Okay.
Because you may be someone who fails, which just essentially means you're a person, but that doesn't make you a failure. Even if you have failed at everything in your life to this point, that doesn't, which is impossible, by the way. But I mean, even if you failed at every major endeavor to this point in your life, that does not make you a failure, no matter who you are.
I agree with that. Yeah, but you, that is 100% true. However, though, I'm still stuck on the I'm still having trouble with trying to take get advice out of this and determine okay, so let's say, big questions that people ask in their lives, like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do for a living? The biggest thing that we've talked about with this, you're going to have to fail multiple career paths, most likely to find the one that's going to work for you. But like we're talking about, any little setback is actually the same as failure, basically. It's just you decide that moment where you're going to walk away and try something else. So it's like that first career path you go down, no matter if you're stubborn enough, you could fail your way to success. Does that make sense? Even if it was but I guess that's not a bad thing, right? It's I guess maybe in my mind there was a better career you could have found if you would have tried harder looking around, but or maybe you were in a position or a situation where you're you're either underemployed or you're not really using your specific set of skills to their fullest, but instead you're you know what I'm saying? There has to be a way to actually identify when you're failing at something because it doesn't align with you versus I mean, like we said earlier, the best answer we came up with was you'll know, it'll feel. But in with a career, I don't know if you would, because like we pointed out, there's many things you're going to be doing for a career that aren't passionate to you at all. It really is just a job. And just I wonder, for myself though, it's has that happened where I'm in different situations where you're doing something that could be sorry, I was trying to make out some of the background noise. I'm so sorry. But it could be something worth pursuing, and you judge the setback as a failure and stop too early, or vice versa, that you should have been veering away from something and you stuck with it for too long because you were too stubborn. Do you have anything any advice on how to make setbacks stand out from failures, how to know when something maybe isn't something worth pursuing?
Yeah. So I guess chiefly so far, I mean, I've kind of kept the subject on things that are more or less at least the contributions I've made, out of my own experience, were things that are more like hobbies.
Okay. Yeah. True.
So, I guess I can personally, I can go back to school, because I think a lot of it just has to do with self-awareness and being aware of the kind of person that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding, what you're good at and what you're not, or what you're willing to do and not willing to do. And for me, I studied psychology for a semester and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this, but I'm going to share it with the listeners. But I got to a point in the program where I was like, I'm going to have to go to school for how long?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck that. So like I don't want to go to school long enough to get a PhD, because I just knew myself and I was like, school is not something that like you really love. Like you're not going to enjoy that. Like even if you like the outcome, you're not going to like the process, and you won't even really excel at the process. Then I kind of dropped out of that program, and I studied business for like a semester. And it's funny because you have a degree in economics, and when I took macroeconomics, I was like, nope. And then I knew that, as a kid, I messed around with computers and I was pretty good with them, and that's how I ended up with IT.
Okay.
And as lame and ridiculous as this sounds, and it's really not my style, because I usually prefer to be more rational or more logical in whatever I do and whatever I say, but it really is like a gut thing.
Okay.
I don't know how else to describe it. Like
it felt right.
Yeah, like I wish I could give like an easy, like cut and dry, like equation or questionnaire that you could just kind of fill out, but I don't know if it's that absolute. I think that it just okay. I think I can make sense of this. I think if you spend enough time thinking about, okay, you have something that it's either a failure or a setback. If you spend enough time thinking about that thing, you can determine if you're being realistic and if you're being honest about yourself with yourself.
Okay.
If you are capable, first you need to figure out what needs to be done for you to be better at this thing. If you can overcome the thing that's just happened. And then you need to determine, honestly, if you are capable of doing what's necessary in that plan to be able to overcome that thing. And if you, being honest, know that you're capable of doing it, then you should at least try. And I think that if you, because you can stop and then fail again and then reassess and then fail again and then reassess and then fail again and then reassess. But I think you're going to get to a point where you can determine that if you're stuck at one spot for long enough, and I think that's a personal thing too. Like I don't think that there's any real 4 weeks or 6 months. Like I think if you get stuck long enough at a certain point in a process, that you can understand this is not a setback, this is a failure. Because I've gone over and over again and tried different ways to get past this one spot, this one roadblock, and it just hasn't happened. And I think there's a point that you'll naturally get to where you just know, like, this is it, like I've failed. And then at that point, it's the same with anything. Like I would even think of it as a grief process. So for me, if someone dies or if I break up with somebody or something bad happens at work or in my family life, I call it going into my cave.
Okay, yeah.
And then I resolve that, okay, you need to take a certain amount of time to grieve over this thing.
Yep.
And then grieve as hard as you can. But when it's time to leave, you get out of your metaphorical cave and you move on.
It's not a real cave.
Right, yeah, it's not a real cave.
Oh, shit, I thought it was not. Like, damn. I thought you had a cave. Dude, I pictured like a bat cave. Man, I was excited.
Like, dude, if I had a cave, I'd totally take you there.
All right, yeah.
Totally. Like, hands down. Like, of all the people I know, you're definitely the guy that I would show my cave.
Ooh.
Like a bat cave. But sometimes the veers that our conversations take are hilarious.
Yeah, sorry. It's my fault, dude. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. But I guess it's like, so it's once it's time to stop grieving the failure, then it's time to stop grieving it and move on. You can spend a couple days being upset about it and pouting or whatever.
I mean,
that's fine.
Yeah, because that process can be beneficial. You can learn something from that too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And then it's time to move on. Like you failed, okay, fine, just move on. It's like playing golf. Like, I mean, you tee off, you shank the fuck out of a ball into the woods, and the only thing you can do is find the ball and try to get it back on the fairway. And then if you try to get it on the fairway and it bounces off a tree back into the fucking woods, well, then you just do the same shit. Always try to make the next shot better. And I mean that's kind of I think where it goes to failure too, is that I mean, I hate the phrase, but you know, people say like fail forward. I think it's silly, but it's like it's basically failing but looking to the future instead of failing and grieving over the past. When it's time to stop grieving, then it's time to stop grieving. And then you move on and you do what you need to do to get to the next thing, to potentially fail at that too.
Well, I think it's important there too, like you're saying, to stop grieving. You don't want to bring your past failures with you into the future, right? Like you want to learn from them, but like don't let it bother you. Don't let it wear you down into like, because it can cascade into future failures, right? If you're going into something thinking about past failures and letting that, you know, ride over you, I think that it's going to put you in a negative stance to start something new.
Yeah, man, agreed. Like, you know, like I think that it's very true. Like in romantic relationships, especially, if you bring like some of the sort of I don't know what to call it, maybe like complexes or difficulties from the past thing with you, then it's going to affect adversely the new situation. That you can learn from what you did wrong in that situation, but if you continually allow the burden of the past difficulties and hardships to constantly enter your mind, then it's going to harm the process of the next thing. So yeah, it's learn the lessons, internalize those lessons, and then move on from the past experience. I used a lot of words. I hope that made sense. So wordy. So yeah, I mean, and have you ever heard the cliche or the saying, like, if you never give up, then you cannot fail?
I don't think I have, no, but I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, but also at the same time, it leaves out the complexity of it, that you also need to know when to give up, because there is sometimes a time where you need to.
Are you saying
going back to the relationship thing too? Like, there's a point, and when you get in a romantic relationship, where you just need to accept the fact that like this won't work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, everything has been tried, and that's that, and it's time to just done and move on.
But it's like, I think that that's the same as like what I was talking about earlier. There are some people that, I don't know if stubborn is the right word, but are so maybe headstrong is even better. But it's like you can make something that's not working work, right? Like they can, through sheer force of will, shove that round peg into the square hole. And you know, you get what I'm saying? Like, and no matter how many times, like you're like, I understand your point that it should be an obvious sign from the situation that, hey, this is not working. It's time to, you know, call this a wrap. Let's go do something else. Let's move on to something else. There are a lot of people that don't get that signal, and they just think like, oh, well, time to try again. And I think that happens with relationships a lot. I think that happens with career paths. I think that happens to a lot of people with different things.
Yeah, well, I think that if you can determine that it requires a disproportionate amount of effort versus the eventual outcome, I mean, that's a pretty clear indication that it's maybe not worth the effort that you're putting in. But I don't really know how you can really gauge or determine that effort is disproportionate.
Exactly. Yeah, I was about to say that's hard data to gather. I don't know. I do feel like the that mistake is very common though. Being able to help people with knowing when to walk away from something or when to continue. Because I think that we as humans, I think we do we make the mistake on each side way too often. I think that there are many times that we stop doing something. Like, have you ever heard I think it, like, people talk about it in weightlifting a lot, but it's like the saying that most people give up at 40%.
Yeah, I mean that's a Navy SEALs thing, the 40% rule.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, David Goggins talks about that a lot, actually.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I feel like that happens a lot, and I feel like the other side happens a lot too. And I'd love to be able to try to help people with that, and even help myself with that. But it may just be like a
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like,
thing.
but like, you know, with weightlifting or like even like endurance sport or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that applies to that pretty well. But a lot of the 40% thing is that, like, when you're specifically the way that the SEALs are talking about it is that when your mind tells you that you are done, your body is only 40% done.
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
sort of like a mind-body thing. That the whole idea of your mind is to keep you safe, and that is a very good place to get to in this, because the fear of failure is actually probably a biological mechanism in us to protect us from harm.
Probably, yeah. But it's been distorted to the point where most of the harm that it's protecting us from now is imagined. It's not actual harm.
Now it's not real because we're not, you know, like foraging in the woods for things and
sometimes
being cave people and such. Well, you know, not often. A lot of it is something that's actually not really going to be that harmful. Like, it's the same way that when someone yells at you, you have like a fight, flight, or freeze response to it.
Yeah.
That you will end up getting that way because your brain perceives someone yelling at you as a threat to your survival.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think a lot of that is just trying to find a rational way to sort of deal with it. But like, you know, like if I'm working out or like doing like ab exercises or something, then I do it a lot where if I get to the point where I feel like in my mind, I'm like, oh man, I need to stop. And I'm like, 40%, bitch, it's 40%, go, you know? And maybe there's situations where, you know, we need to say that with like, with every endeavor, not just like, you know, weightlifting. But once again, I think it's like, I really don't think that there's a way that in this podcast and this conversation that we, or maybe even in any conversation, that we can actually give a clear method to determine when that's enough. I think that it requires everybody themselves to think about whatever's going on rationally and to gauge where they are in the process and the degree of aptitude they have and the degree of desire that they have. Because the thing you said about the whole sheer force of will thing, shoving a round peg through a square hole, which is how we got to, like, I guess the 40% rule subject, is that sometimes there are occasions in which it seems like you can't do it, but if you just push as hard as you possibly can, that you'll get there. But I think that maybe the best thing is, the thing that makes me really mad is when you hear like an athlete or a musician or like a rapper say like, I didn't have a plan B. There was no plan B. It was this or nothing. Like, well, you're a fool. Because if this didn't work out, then that's that.
Well, I mean, that's the point they're making, though, is that they were not going to let this not work out. There was going to be no moment where they chose that it was failure. They were never going to walk away from that poker table and played another one. They were playing at that table until they were tapped out. There is something kind of, romantic about that idea. Like you're saying, it's definitely not safe. It is not the smart way to do things whatsoever. But I can see the, especially with something like art, or, something creative. It's like, if that is your actual passion, if your entire life is devoted to that, then okay, it's kind of cool to see someone, say like, okay, it's either going to be this or nothing. Like you're saying, though, I mean, it's definitely not the smart decision, but it is like, there's part of me that finds it like endearing, I guess.
But in some cases, I think that if you have a plan B, then that makes you comfortable with going all in on plan A. Because worst case scenario, if you go as hard as you can and you still screw this up, there's still something to fall back on.
True.
And that creates a lessened degree of the fear aspect of it, I think.
But like we've talked about before with like we even brought up the Joe Rogan quote about how like pressure makes diamonds and everything. If you're talking about like let's say like in that context, let's say you're talking about someone who wants to be a stand-up comedian and they quit their normal 9-to-5 job to do that so they can go out every single night and do spots, you know, trying to do stand-up. They don't let themselves ever fail at that. Every time they have a bad set, they just say, okay, what do I learn from this? Where am I going to go from here? And they really do put 100% of their life into that. Eventually, they're probably going to succeed at that. You know, like, and there may be the situation where keeping that day job, keeping that plan B could have actually held them back, because that would have given them the security of saying like, oh, well, I don't need to succeed at this because I can still pay the bills by going to McDonald's or, you know, whatever. But
yeah, the whole like burn the ships thing. Yeah, you take the island by burning the ships when you get there.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't give anybody any choice but to succeed.
Exactly.
I find it also to be somewhat like romantic.
It is, yeah.
And you know, it's not realistic. I think it's like a very like, I don't know what to call it. It's like a very like, I can't think of another term to use, but motivation culture.
Yeah, it's like true. Yeah,
it's like a motivation culture like message, and
well, I think it's extraordinary, but I do think that it is what you see. Excuse me, what you see very often from the greats in many different fields or avenues, and it's like, I mean, of course, you can't expect that from the vast majority of people, but it's like it seems to be consistent with like when you look at like the top of each field. It's that, you know, it just so happens that they're kind of in that same exact situation.
I mean, but the only people that you're going to hear from about any of this stuff are the people that succeeded.
Exactly. It's a selection bias, the 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like the same idea that, oh crap, where was I going with that? Yep. Lost my train of thought on that one too. Crap. I don't know where my mind is tonight.
No worries, man. Did you remember to pack it? Or did you leave it at your apartment?
Oh shit.
That was a really bad dad joke. I felt bad for that one.
No, I think I left it at home. Fuck.
It's okay, man. You probably won't need it for the rest of the holiday, right? So you're fine.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, most likely it won't really be required. Yeah, I mean, no one's gonna. Yeah. So, but you know, the one day I did need it, which was today. Like, it's the one day I just packed it for the one day of the trip. But yeah, I mean, I guess that it's. Perhaps have a plan B, but also have the discipline to continue. I think that actually, like, I don't know that it's necessarily admirable to give yourself no choice, because you're not really exercising any degree of strength when you don't have a choice but to succeed. You know, if there's other options yet you continue to press on, then I think it makes it all the more admirable to press on in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As opposed to, you know, making it like a do or die situation. I mean, pretty much most people are going to do instead of die. So I don't know that it's necessarily really that beneficial to burn the boat, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are situations in which, like, well, what if you don't take the island? And I think that it's like a Hail Mary in football. Very last play of the game, you send all of your receivers down the field, and you have nobody in the backfield at all. No running backs, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have everybody every eligible receiver run down the field, and you chuck that football 70 yards. Well, if you succeed, your offensive coordinator is a genius. And if you fail, he is the most miserable dipshit to ever do any kind of football strategy.
Yeah.
So it's like, because it's like, if you burn the boats and you succeed, you're a genius. If you burn the boats and you fail, which you can, you're an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Which the thing is that in my opinion, you're an idiot either way.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't the person if you do a 5 empty wide, you happen. So sorry, that's what they call it when it's 5 wide receivers, I think, and then your backfield is empty.
Okay.
And you just chuck the football. That's what they call that. If you play that kind of formation, you're making a huge risk. Maybe if it's the very end of the game, you have no choice.
And like you're saying, like even in the situation where it worked out, you were still being idiotic.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, damned if you do, damned if you don't for the football thing. But as far as like military strategy goes, like that's just objectively unintelligent. And I think that when we idealize that sort of idea, we're leaving a whole lot out as far as like the reality of things. It's a fun idea and it's very like cool and maybe even a little heroic to think about, but I don't know that it's that valuable.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's like having a plan B decreases the amount of anxiety that you might feel. And really and truly, like if you want to be a stand-up comic, like you can definitely write jokes and you can perform without quitting your job. You can do it. Actually, my sister right now she's actually working on a business while she has her full-time job. Yeah. And she's able to do both things. And actually, I'm thinking I might have a conversation with her after this because I'm interested because I think I'll talk to her personally about how, do you think it would make you any better at this if you just quit your day job?
Well, it would, of course, give you more time to work on it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the reality is that a lot of the tasks she's having to delegate out to other people anyway.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because most of the time, I mean, you're not going to be able to do everything yourself. And it'll give you more time to work on it. But the other thing is you and I are also talking from the perspective of single people that have no children.
True.
And when other things are involved, other aspects of your life, other responsibilities are involved, that changes things a lot. Yeah. So I would actually call it irresponsible in her situation to quit her day job and decide to pursue that full time. Like, and I know she wouldn't do that because she knows that that's the best thing for the people that depend on her. Because it's not just as simple as her and her ambitions, So, but I think the bottom line is that, and yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, like I don't think I have anything else to say on the subject unless you've got more that you want to talk about.
Not really, no. I mean, we kind of ran through all I had like, little headlines of things I wanted to cover. We covered all that. Yeah. What about final words? What do you feel we need to do differently regarding failure in our day-to-day lives?
I mean, really, we just need to you need to accept and weigh the risks rationally. And then if you determine that you're able to accept those risks and tolerate those risks, then you shouldn't be afraid of them. So in short, the only summary statement I have is get out there and fuck it up.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I want to echo that. Failing is important. The more you can do it, the better you're going to get at everything, really. It is an important part of life. It is, I don't know why it's so terrifying for so many of us, but it's only you're only gonna get better at it by doing it. You want to get out there and fail, and you want to learn from the past. Don't let it decide your future. So with that being said, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you liked our conversation here, and if you're watching this on YouTube, and you've enjoyed the conversation, please be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing, and comment below and let us know your opinions on failure. Have you ever had any major failures in your life that what is going on in the background there? What is that? Is that
Are you hearing things?
Yeah, what is that? Is it a dog?
That is a small child.
Oh, it's a small child. Okay, I'm so sorry. All right. Jesus. That was throwing me off so bad. It was like, are they going like
I have no idea what they're doing.
Okay.
I'm very interested to find out.
God. All right. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That had me like completely thrown off. So yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the conversation so far, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing here, and comment below with your experiences with failures in your life and how you learn from them. If you're interested in further taking part of this conversation or even joining us as a future guest, please join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. Don't forget to join us for another episode live Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylaTV. And thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a great week.